It's Black Monday here on Locked On NFL. Great Monday for some people because some people you thought were going to get fired, they actually didn't. We'll talk about those gray areas here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm the host of the barbershop, Tony Wiggins, here as a part of the duo on Locked On NFL to bring the show twice a day here on Locked On NFL that gives you comprehensive coverage from around the league with the use of local experts. That local expert today on Monday is my man Julian Council of Locked On NFL and Locked On Carolina Panthers. We'll get to that in just a second. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by LinkedIn because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. You can also catch Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you tap in each and every day, and then make sure you go over to Amazon Music. Check out Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through some NFC South shenanigans because we have Julian here. We don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about some things we saw with that. Washington turns it around. Big turnaround in D.C., man, and that was punctuated by a win over the rival Dallas Cowboys. Detroit Lions make a statement, and I'll make a statement about Dan Campbell and that team when we get to that. But we'll start at the very top. Who stayed and who goes? It is Black Monday. We'll bury the league. OJ Mayo, not OJ Mayo. OJ Mayo's a basketball. Gerard Mayo. Look at me, man. Can't get out of my AAU shoes, man.
Wow, I mean,
25 years ago. That was a blast from the past. That was a blast from the past, wasn't it?
That's been a minute since I heard OJ Mayo's name. Yeah, Oak Hill legend back in the day.
See, that's because every time I get on here with you, we start talking hoops because of the ACC connection. But no, Gerard Mayo was fired first, and then Doug Peterson was fired in Jacksonville. They should have gone further and fired Trent Balky, but they did not do it. So it's just going to be, in my opinion, a rewind of the same things that happened before. We'll get Julian's opinion on that. But Shane, GM, and Daboll, coach with the New York Giants, kept their jobs. Julian Council, go ahead and start hitting me up, man, on what you think about all of these moves and some that did not happen.
Yeah, we'll start with the latter one about the Giants keeping Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. We've talked about them all season long. In midseason, John Mara, he came out and said, the owner of the Giants, that they were going to stay, that he still believed in them. And yet we kept seeing the Giants lose. We kept seeing people buy the airplanes to fly over MetLife Stadium begging for John Mara to not keep them around. And he decided to not listen to the will of the fans and to stand strong and to bring those guys back and give them a second opportunity to go out there, get their quarterback, and we'll see if it works out this time around. I certainly applaud Mara for at least sticking to his guns and deciding that he was going to do what he said he was going to do earlier on this season. And at this point in time, they're kind of stuck with these guys for 2 years. You can't just bring them back for one season, likely get another quarterback this upcoming year, and then bail after next season. It's got to be a 2, possibly 3-year potential, like, I don't know, not project, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, proposition with them coming back for next couple of years. So we'll see how that works out. I mean, Gerard Mayo getting fired, I don't really understand how you put in his contract that he's going to be your head coach, and then a year after that, you're going to fire him, other than Mike Vrabel going to the Jets, interviewing there, and probably putting pressure on Robert Kraft to fire Mayo and to hire him, as he's going to be one of the top candidates out there this head coaching cycle. I mean, Jacksonville, a complete mess. I thought Doug Peterson was going to work out. Obviously, everything changed at the end of last season when they completely fell apart. And this year, it was horrible. And the fact that Trent Balky still has a job in the National Football League as a general manager is just beyond comprehension. It is. I feel for all the folks down there in Jacksonville that they got to keep doing this every single year with the Khan family that are just con artists, clearly, as they keep getting folks to spend their money on just the worst product in the NFL year in and year out.
Let me touch on that real quick because I used to give Shad a little bit of grace because he was not meddlesome. I would give him a little bit of grace because he was extremely patient, too patient. I don't think there's patience anymore. I look at it now as fear. I look at it as fear and complacency. You know, patience and complacency, they look like identical twins until you put them under a microscope, right? Like kind of like love and hate a little bit, right? Or love and lust. The thing for me is, how can he's now come out and said that the new head coach is going to report to him and not to the GM? If that's not a self ratio for you keeping the GM, but the GM is going to help you find the coach. So wait a minute, let me get this clear. The GM Trent Balky is going to help you with the coaching search, but the new coach will not report to Trent Balky. He'll report to you. Unless you're going to get a senior executive vice, an executive EVP, an EVP, an executive vice president, or some other conduit. Shad Khan's weakness has been, and in which I gave it to him as just a personality characteristic, is that he's not hovering around the franchise like Jerry Jones. And that could be when you have positive people in these positions, but they don't. How is a coach going to report to a guy that's never here? How is a coach going to report to a guy that's afraid to make a decision? How are you going to keep a GM to help you find a coach, but then the coach is going to circumvent that authority and go around you? It continues to be a finger-pointing exhibition here, and that's what he's setting this up to be again. This is exactly what he did when he retained Doug Marrone and he fired Tom Coughlin and he had GM Dave Caldwell, and they weren't in lockstep, but they both individually reported to him. We've seen this story all over. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it never works when it happens. And you kind of look at last year in Tennessee, Mike Vrabel kind of was that situation where John Robinson, he gets fired by the owner there. Vrabel comes in now and was basically trying to be the leader of the entire organization. And then there's a power struggle at the top between him, Rand Carthon, who came over from San Francisco to be the general manager, and the owner. And we saw that Vrabel lost that power struggle. So eventually, as you just mentioned, like there will be issues with Balky sticking around, whoever takes this job. I don't know who exactly want to take this job right now. Now, it's possible that the Khans wake up and they see that maybe Ben Johnson or Vrabel, which I don't really see be realistic, but maybe one of those top Kansas sides, they actually want to work in Jacksonville because they still have Trevor Lawrence. There's still an opportunity potentially for Trevor to really play up to the contract they gave him last offseason. And if he wakes up and decides, let me get rid of Balky, maybe things can work out. But you mentioned Jerry Jones there. Like, that's the one I think we're all still waiting on. What's going to happen with Mike McCarthy? As Cowboys obviously did not make the playoffs, not having Dak Prescott for the majority of the season is a big reason why. Also, the defensive struggles throughout the season. It's a big reason why Mike Zimmer looks like he still has his job, but it's obviously going to be tied to whether McCarthy comes back or not. And that would certainly be an attractive job if Dallas comes open. Everyone always talks about Jerry Jones, who's asked about whether he would ever bring in a different general manager. And he's like, no, I bought the team. I'm going to run the team. Hey. This is my team. Which, hey, you know what? It's true. He says
he didn't buy that team as an investment. He bought it as an occupation. He said he's going to do it to the day he dies. I don't blame him, by the way.
Right.
But I also don't blame us for sitting here talking about him.
I mean, he's not done a bad job. When Dak has been healthy in recent years, the Cowboys have been in the playoffs. He was not healthy a couple of years ago when he broke his ankle. He was not healthy this year. They didn't make the playoffs. All the other years, recently, they've won like 12 games. The only problem is when they get to the playoffs, what happened to him last January against Green Bay has been happening to him on a regular basis, and it's been a long drought. So I'm curious to see how that works out. The Raiders as well. Antonio Pierce certainly has kept his job up until this point in time. They're a team. Let me look over at tankathon.com right now to see where they're at in the draft order. I mean, they're sixth. They won a couple games in the season, and I know their fans aren't happy about that as they desperately need a quarterback. That's a spot to look at. Tom Brady, what's his influence potentially when it comes to that possible job opening if it opens up? Because Vrabel, that's a place that he could go potentially. So, yeah, I mean, I was surprised to see Lou Anarumo get fired in Cincinnati. Yeah. I understand that defense wasn't great this past year, but he's been a key part of when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, the AFC title runs. I don't know why he's the scapegoat. Like, maybe the players could be better other than just firing your coordinator. But we'll see what they're able to do up there in Cincinnati, as obviously like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, maybe T. Higgins moving forward. Like, they got something offensively. Got to get that defense figured out. Everybody except for Trey Hendrickson just kind of didn't really live up to their potential this past season.
You said something critical to me, wondering if Raheem Morris was in danger, and obviously he might not be. You mentioned when you're talking about the Giants, you're not going to fire a guy when he brings in a rookie quarterback. Like starting Michael Penix's career off with a one-year coach and then somebody else all over again. That's not good. That's not ideal. So maybe the Michael Penix situation is why Raheem Morris may get a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, I would think he should be safe. Obviously, the way things ended in Atlanta weren't ideal, and the whole Kirk Cousins situation. Obviously, Arthur Blank, the owner there in Atlanta, has far more insight than we do on why they decided to give Kirk that money, then trade up to or get Michael Penix Jr. Or I guess they didn't even trade up. They're just right there in the draft to take him. I do think that kind of extends the clock for Raheem Morris, but he's going to have to win next year. I don't think this can be a situation where Atlanta goes from being 7-10 a year ago with bad quarterback play to now 8-9 this past season and brings in Michael Penix Jr., where they were close to making the playoffs, losing overtime last week and losing overtime again on Sunday, even though their fate was already decided by Tampa Bay. But as the overtime kicked off there in Atlanta, so that will buy him some time, but he's not. I don't think he's going to have much time to get things figured out, because I do think Arthur Blank is desperate to get a winner. And I feel like the clock's not necessarily ticking in the NFC South, which we'll talk about later, but there's not yet a franchise that kind of has their quarterback. It looks like Tampa does with Baker Mayfield,
right?
But there's still an opening for someone to try to be that dominant force. And right now, it looks like it's going to be Tampa, as they won the division now 3 years in a row. Brady 1 year, Baker the last 2.
Dangerous team going into the playoffs too. And speaking of the playoffs, a lot was decided last night in some people call it the game of the century in the regular season in the National Football League. I'll tell you something else that was decided. We're talking about quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy was talked about as being someone who Minnesota could trade for a bounty and get a whole bunch of picks if they decided to go long-term with Sam Darnold. Well, Sam Darnold kind of turned back into Sam Darnold in the biggest moment, and we'll discuss that here and more on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is super, super crucial. LinkedIn gets that, and that's why you can connect with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helped them find high-quality candidates. They helped me find a whole barbershop full of people when I was building my shop, and it took a lot off my plate, and they can do the same thing for you. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Rocket Money. That's right, man. All these subscriptions that I've had in the past, and I forgot that I had them, and they kept taking money out of my bank. And, it happened to me, and I had a few that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down, and it's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. One of the best features, and my wife was really, really happy. I tracked down all of those subscriptions I wasn't using anymore, and I started saving money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Rocketmoney/lockedon. All right, moving right along here on Locked On NFL on a Monday with my normal Monday local expert, national expert in this situation, Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. Julian, a lot was made of the Battle of the North. Sound like a Game of Thrones episode or something. And early on, it kind of lived up to it, and then it kind of wore out. The team that got wore out, the team that was worn out, wasn't the team that was already playing with a bunch of second-team players. It was the Vikings, and what wore them out probably came internally from their quarterback. I'm going to hear Luke Braun talk about a choke job here in a second, and then we'll get to the Detroit Lions, who I have a bold statement to make about. Check out Luke Braun and get a laugh.
Excuse me, I was just choking a little bit there. The Vikings choked away their chance. That's it. They could have had the 1 seat. They could have had home field advantage. They just had to show up, beat the Lions, and play well against a team that is depleted, that isn't the same team. The Vikings are healthier than they were last time, and this game went way worse. The Vikings showed up, and the moment was too big for them. And it was pretty clear that the moment was too big for them because they had guys schemed open. They had the long pockets that they always have. Sam Darnold was under a ton of pressure. The Lions blitzed the heck out of them all night long, and the Vikings did not have any answers. And honestly, this is way more on the offense than the defense. Split the blame by however you want between Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold, but the defense did well for about 2.5 quarters, and then the dam broke. Final score, 31-9. Vikings meekly kneeling it out as they get the ball back with a few seconds. Just disgusting. We'll talk about it more on the postcast and on Locked On Vikings, but get some sleep.
Yeah, get some sleep. Don't laugh at Luke, man.
Just
Luke,
disgusting.
Luke got a whole bunch of agony going on up there, bro. But look, real talk. I think Kevin O'Connell, and I'm a huge fan, dog. I think he made a terrible mistake. And you know what it is? He tried to act like Dan Campbell. You never go in another dude's house and do the things that he does. Dan Campbell always goes for it. I get angry when he goes for it a lot of times, right? It's like, come on, dude, that's going to hinder you. Kevin O'Connell goes in there and tries to do the Dan Campbell thing like we're going to go for, instead of just kicking all of those damn field goals. I'm going to tell you, I think he sucked the total air out of his team, and then Sam Darnold wasn't hot. You got to be able to get around that man and try to help that dude out a little bit because Sam Darnold looked like the Sam Darnold you and Patricia Traynor and everybody else criticized early in the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam's had a great year. You cannot take away what he's done this season, getting Minnesota or helping to get Minnesota to 14-3 this season and now being the 5 seed. He's been outstanding and he's been far better than he's ever been at any stop. And I do give him a lot of credit and I truly am happy for him because by all accounts, from everybody I've talked to here in Charlotte, he's a great dude. So good for him. But I haven't believed. The last time I believed Sam Darnold was going to be that dude was in the Rose Bowl against Penn State. He had this one throw on a
I know which one you're talking about. It's like a post, wasn't it?
Yep. Unbelievable touchdown throw. I'm like, that kid, he's got the goods. The next year, he's on Sports Illustrated, on ESPN, the magazine, when we used to have those magazines on the cover, talking about Heisman Trophy, #1 pick. And all he did all year long was throw picks, turned the ball over. Did it in New York, did in Carolina, didn't really do it in San Francisco because he didn't really get an opportunity. And he hasn't really done it that much this season. But I have just not been a believer in a long time. And last night kind of is why. And Aaron Glenn's going to get a lot of opportunities. I've already seen today he's getting a lot of interview requests. Last night may have been his magnum opus. To think about all the guys who have not been there for Detroit this season defensively and to shut down Minnesota in the red zone. That's where the game was won and lost. I hate that coaches feel like they always have to go for the touchdown and not kick the field goal in that situation. Because at least early on in the game, like Luke mentioned, for 2.5 quarters, that defense that Brian Flores had has been outstanding all year. They held down Detroit. It felt like points were going to be at a premium in that game. And I would not have decried the fact that Kevin O'Connell would have decided, let's just go ahead and kick the ball. But he wanted to go for it constantly. And for the fact that one time he goes for it, then doesn't get it. Then he decides, let me actually go ahead and kick the field goal this time. Like, make up your mind. Then it's 4th and 4 from like the 33, and they opt to kick a 51-yard field goal, which Will Reichard misses. Like, I just don't understand. Like, why not go for it in that situation? And you're going to settle for the points for a 50-yard field goal, which is not guaranteed compared to obviously like a 30-yarder when you're in the red zone. It would be guaranteed. It's unfortunate. And I know a lot of people have had the conversation. You can't move on from Sam Darnold based on what he's done. You got to let things play out, man. They drafted J.J. McCarthy for a reason. Sam Darnold is supposed to be their backup for a reason. We have seen how he's played. Obviously, he's been great in this system this season, but he looked rattled. He should have thrown at least 3 interceptions that game on Sunday night. He also was overthrowing guys. He had opportunities in the red zone to score touchdowns if he actually would have been on target with some of those throws to Justin Jefferson. Let's see how things play out, because if they lose to the Rams on the road next week, which I would not be surprised about, then what? Do people want Sam Darnold to be the quarterback moving forward within the 2 biggest games? Possibly if he plays bad again on Monday night, next Monday night, will people believe, or will they be like, okay, actually, it's still the Sam Darnold had a great year, but let's move on?
Well, this is the definition, the 101 definition of upside, because they realize as much as this story is good, Sam Darnold's going to only take them so far because it ain't about being physical. Sometimes it's about having that thing on the inside. And sometimes it's about having that thing in your noggin that allows you to stay measured. And he looked really, really unmeasured last night. They should have kicked those field goals and then just said, look, man, we just got to get out our own way and make one play. And it would have been 17-15, but they decided not to do that. Now, here's why it's critical. Here's why you get nervous when you play teams like Detroit, because they relentlessly beat you into submission. I got to give Dan Campbell credit. The statement I'm about to make is this is the best coaching job I have ever seen in my life. Because normally when I say that, it's a coach that is overachieving with bad players, kind of like what KOC did to Minnesota this year. Even though those players aren't bad, they were perceived to be not as good as they are. I will tell you this. I have never seen a team to be elite after losing like 20 players on injury reserve. That means that they are in lockstep. This is why those firings and hirings and the incomplete dismissal of everyone in Jacksonville means so much. You ain't never going to beat no team, man. And I know that's bad English, but you ain't ever going to beat no team where the GM is good, the coach is good, and they are in lockstep to the point where everybody on that damn team from 1 to 53 all have the same attitude. Yeah, man, if you got a coach reporting around the GM, that's the point. It's not all relative. It is relative. We are measuring these people and their decisions against people like them and the Chiefs that make elite decisions with elite people and then know how to get elite players. That is the thing. It's not about whether or not you can look respectable. Are you ever going to be able to beat them with the shenanigans that you are doing right now? And I don't think so. And that goes for a whole bunch of teams. Go ahead.
Sorry, you look at teams like San Francisco, who was expected to be a Super Bowl contender this year. They had a bunch of injuries, and where are they at? They went 7-10, 6-11, worse.
And they're used to winning. They're used to winning.
And like here, and we've seen this has happened a couple of times with San Francisco where they've had injuries, and that has just derailed their season. And I get it. When in the past, they lost Nick Bosa, they lose Ayuk this season. When you have Trent Williams out, it's difficult. McCaffrey doesn't play. Like those are obviously critical pieces. But so is Alex Anzalone, who came back and was terrific, neutralized the TJ Hawkinson threat last night in that game. Yeah, physicality, probably some penalties that should have been thrown more, but still, they didn't call him. And they lost Terry and Arnold last night. Like Hutch is not playing in that game. Now he may be back for the Super Bowl, which would be outstanding for him. But man, for what they've lost and for them to go 15-2,
come on, man.
Like that. He's the coach of the year. You're right. It's one of the best coaching jobs that we will ever see. And it's not like, oh, we thought this team was going to suck. And actually they didn't suck. Nah, we thought this team was going to be great. And they were great, but it wasn't in the manner that we thought it was going to be. For a period of time, it was when they were beating the brakes off of teams when they were healthy. But the last month and a half, last 2 months, when they've had injury after injury, they have still held tight defensively at what they've been able to do on offense as well. And they had to win that game because I did not think Detroit was going to be able to win 3 games and be able to get to the Super Bowl. Now the fact that everybody's going to go through them in Detroit, I think they're going to be right down there in New Orleans.
Yep, they're going to be down there unless the Philadelphia.
And Aaron Glenn can stay there, by the way, because he'll probably just end up being the Saints head coach.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a good point. And here's something we never say. Hey, look, if Detroit had lost the last 7 games of the season, we'd all been like, man, we fully understand, dog. It did everything. So the fact that not only did they not do that, but they went through some heavy hitters to secure home field advantage for the rest of the season, and then they played that game in San Francisco when they really didn't have to. But I think they had all of those people who hadn't played together who needed to play together. They had to work the kinks out of their defense. And last night you saw them do exactly that. All right, man, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run through the NFC South. We're going to let Julian cook since we're talking about coaches who did and did not get fired, young quarterbacks that are going to be looking good. We'll discuss all of that and more here in the third and final segment on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share betting lines around your team or league. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, moving along, my man JC here, Locked On Carolina Panthers, Locked On NFL expert here on a Monday that we call Black Monday. A quick review. We looked at the coaches who have been fired. Gerard Mayo, of course, we already know the Bears and the Saints made their moves. Gerard Mayo got the Jets. Yep, the Jets also made their move. The Giants did not make their move. The Jaguars made their move, kinda. They stuck 5 toes in the water. They didn't go all the way in. So really, it's just more of the same in Jacksonville. But we talked about the Atlanta Falcons earlier. The Atlanta Falcons did not make a move. I think a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that, it's almost like those colleges when a coach at the end of the year plays the true freshman and then the year doesn't go the way he thought or wasn't going the way he thought. And then he could say to the AD, hey, we got this freshman. He's got his experience now. Let him cook and do his thing. Let's hear from Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, who lost the game yesterday, that by the time they lost it, they were cooked anyway, but they didn't know that they were cooked when they were playing the Carolina Panthers all game, and they didn't look good doing it, and Julian was there. So let's check this out.
Falcons choke in their chance for a winning season. I'm Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons. Well, the Falcons needed to win to make the playoffs. They also needed a Bucs loss, but the Bucs were able to take care of business after a slow start against the Saints. The Falcons did not take care of business against the Carolina Panthers, despite impressive days for the offense from Bijan Robinson to Michael Penix. Defense didn't necessarily step up. Bryce Young scored 5 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 2 on the ground, a Michael Penix interception in the third quarter on a bobbled pass to Ray-Ray McCloud, with the Panthers scoring a touchdown off that turnover, coupled with a missed field goal from Riley Pederson, proved to be the difference. The Falcons have now suffered their 7th straight losing season, finishing 8-9 despite a 6-3 start in 2024. Well, there's always next year. So for more coverage of the Atlanta Falcons offseason strategies and moves, follow Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We heard a word and a term that we always hear. One, he said choke. That's the same thing Luke Braun said earlier, and that seems to happen to a lot of teams that just aren't good, and they just throw stuff against the wall to see what sticks. But something he said is, and something that you and I are both used to is, wait till next year. And unfortunately for a lot of teams, the same teams end up telling their fans that after 18 weeks.
Yeah, I'll say this. I know I'm coming from the Carolina Panthers perspective. I don't know if they've choked. I think they just got beat by a team that was better than them yesterday. I mean, flat out, you watch Carolina the last half of the season, these final 9 games, they went 4-5. We saw them go toe-to-toe against Kansas City. Saw the same thing against the Buccaneers the first time around in Charlotte in a game I thought they should have won, that they lost in overtime. They went to Philadelphia, and if Xavier Legette catches that football, they go up and potentially they win that game. There would have been about 46 seconds left. So this is not the Panthers that start off 1-7. Completely different team. It's not like they had the massive turnaround like Detroit had a couple years ago when they also started off like 0-7 or whatever it was, and they ended up winning like all but like the one of their games at the end of the season. That kept Aaron Rodgers out his final game in Green Bay, and that's built what they are now the last 2 seasons there in Detroit. Not saying that's what Carolina's gonna be able to do, but I think right now you look at them compared to Atlanta, like, I mean, obviously Carolina's defense is terrible. The worst defense in the history of the NFL is they get 534 points this year, but they were right there on par, if not better than the Falcons yesterday in that game. And yeah, that turnover, that was tough, as that was a ball that went off Ray-Ray McCloud's hands and into Mike Jackson. But I mean, Carolina, they're not as bad as they were obviously earlier in the season, and we'll see what Atlanta's able to do. I was thinking too, it's interesting that there's only one general manager job open right now, that being with the Jets. And I mean, Rex Ryan, I see he thinks he has a good chance of getting that job. If the Jets do that, just go ahead and fold the franchise. Like that is just unreal if they decide to go back to Rex Ryan, where I suppose the last time they did have success, it was Rex taking him to the AFC Championship game back in 2010. Now it's been 15 years, I guess 14 seasons since that's happened. But my God, man. But the Falcons, I like Michael Penix Jr. I think Raheem, second time around, he'll get it figured out. That defense was questionable this season. They have the weapons on offense. It's not always going to happen instantly like a lot of people want. I do think they'll probably be fine medium term in Atlanta. Won't say long term because none of this is ever long term.
Yeah. Quick. I think I'd rather be, if I was looking at football futures, I'd rather be the Carolina. I'd rather be on the Panthers bandwagon than on the Falcons, because I think the Falcons are like stuck in mediocrity and they can't get past that. I think Carolina, they found something. They found something with a banged up defense. And all of these teams, and by the way, Tampa's dangerous. And I do want to give a shout out to them for what they did for Mike Evans yesterday, and to give Mike Evans credit for being just a consummate professional. And the good guys do end up getting rewarded. They're a dangerous team in the playoffs. Now, they can get blown out too. They can blow you out, or they can get blown out. Tampa's going to be that weird type of team. But I'm going to tell you something. There's a blueprint for all of those bad teams that we talked about today, and it is in Washington. You want to talk about turning the stink around? See, the first thing you have to realize is when you stink and what the reason is. You got to take a bath. And that's exactly what the Washington franchise did, and they did it from the inside of Washington. I wanted to give Washington a little bit of credit for being a turnaround. That is the example, Julian Council, that every single body needs to pay attention to, the Washington Commanders.
It's incredible. You change ownership where Dan Snyder for 20 years held a city hostage and destroyed that franchise. You bring in a new owner and Josh Harris, who, I mean, I know the Sixers apparently having their issues this season, but the Sixers have been a winning franchise in the NBA recently, and maybe they'll be able to win the big one if Joel Embiid can ever stay healthy. Don't hold your breath. It's not going to happen. But he's gone down there, down on 95, down to Washington. He brought in the top general manager on the market last year, and Adam Peters, who helped them build a monster there in San Francisco, of course, when they're healthy. And they go out and get Dan Quinn, who I know things didn't end great in Atlanta, but the guy was up 28-3 in a Super Bowl once upon a time. It looked like they were going to run away with it. And the next year they were a good team. And Matt Ryan won the MVP back when he was a head coach. Like, that's a guy that people loved in Seattle. They loved in Atlanta when things were going great, of course. And they loved them last year in Dallas, even at the very end when they were getting embarrassed by Green Bay. Those players loved him. And we have seen how his affable personality, his leadership has led to this overall turnaround. I got to give a lot of credit to Ron Rivera, who was there before, changing the culture and really having to just eat crap when he was there and left, or he got fired in Carolina, to kind of turn things around, get them to be respectful, because they did go to the playoffs the first year. And he was always going to fight upstream to get that to be a respectable organization, to be able to have the foundation that once Harris bought the team, once he brought in Peters, once he brought in Dan Quinn, and obviously what they've done with Jaden Daniels, like, that has been just a really great story. And I'm happy for all those folks who are long time, then Redskins fans, then Washington football, now Washington Commander fans, who get to see this team be where they're at. Now, I think it's going to be short-lived. I do think Tampa Bay is going to win that game. And I do think Tampa Bay actually is a threat, especially now that they have the 3 seed in the NFC playoffs. But man, what a season for Washington, and for the city to maybe even get that team back at RFK one day, which would truly just be amazing at that.
Be amazing. It would be remarkable. It would be amazing. Y'all are remarkable for tuning in to Locked On NFL each and every day, but make sure you do it twice. Check out Tyler Rowland early in the morning. The madman will wake you up like a shot of espresso, and then you can slide through the barbershop here with me, and we'll cool it out for you a little bit, but we'll pick at people too, because that's kind of what we do here on our show. You guys, make sure you tune in tomorrow. We'll have more on any moving parts around the National Football League, coaching searches, and all of that stuff. So we'll be with you with that. Continue to support us, and we'll continue to deliver the content that we deliver you every single day. I appreciate y'all for joining Julian Council and myself here on Locked On NFL. Take care.